my name is Ryan Walker. I'm 36 years old and currently serve as a captain in the United States Marine Corps. I've spent the last 14 years of my life in uniform, leading men into some of the hardest environments on Earth, always with a deep sense of duty to my country, my family, and the code I live by. If you had met me 6 months ago, you would have said I was one of the lucky ones. I had everything most people dream of. A beautiful wife named Melissa who lit up every room she walked into. A modern penthouse in downtown Dallas, high up where the world seemed quieter, calmer. And Dylan, my younger brother, who I raised after our parents died in a car crash when we were kids. We weren't just family, we were a unit. We leaned on each other. I thought that meant something. Melissa and I had been married for almost 3 years. She was elegant, kind, supportive, at least that's what I believed. Every time I deployed, she made sure I never left feeling alone. She wrote letters, sent care packages, even kept up a framed photo of us on our wedding day next to my side of the bed. It wasn't just about romance, it felt like loyalty. Real, unshakable loyalty. Dylan had moved in with us the year after we got married. He was going through a rough patch and needed help getting back on his feet. I didn't hesitate. He was my brother, blood. I figured having him close would be good for all of us. I never once questioned his intentions. I never imagined there could be a line he'd cross. In my mind, he was still that kid who clung to me at our parents' funeral, scared and silent, depending on me to carry us both through. Looking back, I see now how much I missed. How much I trusted without thinking. But at the time, I truly believed I was living the life I'd earned. A good life, built on sacrifice, love, and trust. I had no idea that trust was the very thing about to destroy me. Before every deployment, there's a rhythm to how I prepare. Gear checks, paperwork, training updates, saying goodbye. I've done it so many times it's like muscle memory. But this time, something felt different. I couldn't shake the sense that I was forgetting something or that something was about to happen and I didn't know what. It wasn't dramatic. Just a quiet, gnawing unease that settled in my chest and wouldn't leave. Melissa kissed me that morning the same way she always did. Sweet, casual, coffee still on her breath. Dylan was already gone for the day, off to wherever he claimed to be working. I packed like normal, but I kept stopping, looking around the apartment like I was trying to memorize it. I told myself it was just deployment nerves, but I'd never been this hesitant before. I'd been to Afghanistan 3 times. I knew what to expect there. What I didn't understand was why home suddenly felt so fragile. That evening, while Melissa was in the shower, I opened the small safe in our closet where I kept my important documents. I'd bought a set of discreet home surveillance cameras months ago but never installed them. That night, I did. One in the living room, one in the hallway. One pointed toward the front door. No audio, nothing fancy. Just motion-triggered clips I could access from my phone. I told myself it wasn't about trust. I believed Melissa loved me. I believed Dylan appreciated what I'd done for him. But belief isn't always enough. I didn't tell Melissa. I felt weird about it, like I was violating some unspoken rule between people who share a life. But the pit in my stomach wouldn't let me ignore it. I told myself it was for emergencies. That maybe, just maybe, if something ever happened, someone broke in, the apartment caught fire, anything, I'd be glad I had it. Still, I hated the feeling that I was preparing for something I couldn't name. The day I left, I looked around our place one last time. Everything seemed in its place. Melissa waved from the balcony as I loaded my gear into the car. Dylan texted me a thumbs up and told me to be safe. I smiled and nodded, but it all felt hollow. There was a silence under the surface that made my skin itch. At the airport, while waiting to board, I watched families say goodbye. Some cried, some just hugged. I sat alone, staring at the terminal windows, thinking about how many times I'd done this and how this time, something about it felt final. Like I was leaving something behind that I wasn't meant to. The flight to the base was long. As I looked out over endless clouds, I kept circling the same thought. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm being paranoid. I hope I get home in 8 weeks, laugh at myself, and forget this ever happened. But a part of me, the same part that's helped me spot IEDs and sense ambushes before they hit, whispered that this wasn't nothing. That something was coming, and I needed to be ready. It wasn't fear exactly, it was instinct. And instincts don't care if you're in love. They just do their job. Mine was telling me I'd left something back home that didn't want me to return. And that scared me more than any war zone ever had. Afghanistan has its own rhythm. The heat, the dust, the drone of helicopters in the distance. You keep your head down, do your job, stay sharp. That's how I'd always handled deployments. This one should have been no different, but about 2 weeks in, I got an email that stopped me cold. It was from Mrs. Mildred Harris, my neighbor from the floor below. She's retired, lives alone, sweet woman who bakes too many cookies and always asks about my deployments. The subject line was simple, something strange. I opened it, expecting a story about a weird noise in the hallway or a package mix-up. Instead, it said she had seen a man entering my apartment multiple times over the past week. Always when Melissa was home, sometimes late at night. She didn't want to assume anything but felt it wasn't right. Thought I should know. I remember reading it 3 times before I could even react. At first, I didn't feel anything. Then my stomach dropped, like I just stepped off a ledge and was waiting to hit the ground. It wasn't the man, it was the timing, the confirmation. The realization that maybe the cameras weren't a paranoid move after all. I told myself it could be a friend. Someone Melissa knew. Maybe Dylan had forgotten something and came back. Maybe it was nothing. But that voice in the back of my head, the one that had whispered warnings before, was screaming now. I tried to focus on my tasks, stay in the moment, but my head kept drifting back home, back to our front door and whoever was walking through it. Sleep became nearly impossible. Every night I stared at the ceiling of the tent, listening to the wind flap against the canvas, thinking about who was sleeping in my bed. My instincts were at war with my heart. I wanted to believe in Melissa. I needed to. But the seeds of doubt had taken root and were growing fast. I didn't tell anyone, not my unit, not my commanding officer, not even Dylan. I just kept it buried, carried it with me on every patrol like extra weight in my pack. I replayed that email in my head over and over, looking for something I'd missed. Some clue that would let me breathe again. But there wasn't one. I started checking the camera feed remotely whenever I had signal, watching short clips that felt like home movies turned into surveillance footage. Nothing definitive yet, just shadows, movement, hints. But enough to make me sick with suspicion. Enough to make me wonder if the life I thought I had was already gone. That sense of danger I'd felt before I left? It was no longer a feeling. It had a face now, a time, a place. And I was 7,000 miles too far from all of it. When I stepped back into my apartment after 8 weeks in the desert, everything looked exactly how I left it. The bed was made, the fridge had groceries. My framed wedding photo still sat on the hallway table, untouched. But the air felt stale. Something about the silence pressed in on me like the walls had been holding secrets. I didn't unpack right away. I dropped my bag in the corner, grabbed a bottle of water, and went straight to my laptop. I hadn't looked at most of the camera footage while I was gone. I told myself I didn't want to be the kind of husband who doubted his wife or spied on his home. But now, sitting there, jet-lagged and cold inside, I opened the files and started watching. The first few days looked normal. Melissa coming home from work, Dylan dropping off groceries. A few friends over for a movie night. Then came a clip from the 3rd weekend I was gone. The front door opened, and there he was. Dylan, my brother, walking in with a key, carrying takeout, laughing. Behind him, Melissa. They kissed. Not a friendly hug or an accidental touch. They kissed like lovers. Hands in each other's hair. No hesitation. I leaned forward, hoping I was wrong, that it was a trick of the angle or a joke gone too far. But it wasn't. It was clear, open, repeated. My stomach turned. But I couldn't stop. I kept watching, hour after hour. There were clips of them on the couch, tangled under a blanket. Melissa wearing one of his shirts. Dylan grabbing a beer from the fridge like it was his home. It wasn't just betrayal, it was routine, comfortable, like I was the stranger in my own life. Then came the part that broke me. One clip started with them sitting on the edge of our bed. Dylan had his arm around her shoulder. Melissa was holding her phone, scrolling through something. I turned up the volume. Their voices were muffled, but I caught enough. She said my life insurance would clear faster if there was no investigation. He asked if I'd sign the new form before I left. Then he said it. We just need to make it clean. Something quick. No mess. Like an accident. Then he laughed. Melissa leaned in and whispered something about the hunting trip he planned. A perfect spot, no cameras, no one else around. I couldn't hear the rest. My ears were ringing. My hands were shaking. I slammed the laptop shut and sat there, frozen. I wasn't just watching my wife and my brother cheat. I was watching them plan my death. The feeling in my chest wasn't pain. It was collapse. Like every part of my life folded in on itself at once. These were the two people I had loved and protected the most. One I married, one I raised. They didn't just betray me, they wanted me gone. I sat there for hours, not moving. My phone buzzed a few times. Probably Melissa asking when I'd be home. Dylan had sent a dumb meme earlier that day, like nothing was happening. Like they hadn't just carved my future into pieces behind my back. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was something deeper, a hollowing. A sense that the world I thought I understood was fake, and I had been the only one who didn't know. I kept thinking about that moment at the airport when I felt like I was forgetting something. I wasn't. Something was being taken from me, piece by piece. And now I had to decide what to do with what I knew, because there was no coming back from this. Not for them, not for me. The next morning, I called a private investigator, a retired federal agent with a reputation for being thorough, discreet, and brutally honest. I didn't tell him everything at first, just that I had suspicions about my wife and needed to confirm who she'd been seeing while I was deployed. But deep down, I already knew. What I needed was proof, hard proof, something admissible, something undeniable. Within days, he came back with more than I bargained for. He tracked phone records, financial activity, even pulled surveillance from the parking garage. But what hit hardest were the documents. Melissa had recently contacted our insurance provider, not just to verify my existing policy. She had filed paperwork requesting an update to the beneficiary. The new name? Dylan Walker. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was logistics. These two weren't playing house. They were planning an exit. Mine. The investigator also dug up a digital trail. Emails, text messages, deleted calendar notes. Dylan had searched for wilderness spots outside the city known for hunting accidents. There was even a reservation confirmation for a cabin near one of those areas, scheduled for the weekend I was supposed to come back. That cabin had no cell service, no neighbors, one entrance road. I'd never heard about it before, but they had. Then came the most chilling part. A typed letter saved to a USB drive Melissa had hidden in her desk drawer. The investigator found it during a sweep of her laptop backups. The file was named Just In Case. It was a suicide note, written from my point of view, full of vague regret, mental exhaustion, and lines that would make the insurance claim process smooth. They were preparing to stage my death as a mental health crisis. A man who couldn't take the pressure anymore. A tragic veteran story. Clean, tragic, profitable. Every word in that letter was a weapon. They'd written the end of my life, rehearsed it, and saved it like a backup plan. When I got home early, they didn't panic, they adjusted. Dylan canceled the cabin, but rescheduled it for the following weekend. Melissa started pressing me to get away, said I looked stressed, said I needed a break, even offered to plan the whole thing for me. I smiled, played along, pretended not to know that every kind gesture was a thread in a noose they thought I hadn't seen. They were close to finishing it. The paperwork, the timing, the trap, and the only thing that had saved me so far was a gut feeling and a hidden camera. But I couldn't keep playing dumb for long. I had to move fast. Before they tried again, before they got smarter, before I really ended up dead. I knew I couldn't confront them. Not yet. They were too careful, too calm. If I blew my cover, they'd vanish or find another way. I needed them to feel safe. I needed them to think I didn't know a thing. So I came up with a plan. If they wanted me dead, I'd give them what they wanted. I called them both, said I wanted to talk. Told them I'd been thinking, reflecting, that maybe we all needed a clean slate. Melissa sounded hesitant at first. Dylan jumped at the idea. I invited them to dinner at my place that Friday, just the three of us. No tension, no more pretending, just one night to reset everything. Behind the scenes, I coordinated with my attorney and a detective from the local precinct. We wired the apartment, placed a hidden team in the guest room and hallway closet, audio, video, everything on record. The plan was simple: let them make their move, let them think they'd won. Then bring it all down. That night, I cooked their favorite meal, set the table like old times, played soft music in the background. Everything about the room said warmth and forgiveness. Melissa wore a red dress. Dylan brought a bottle of wine. We smiled. We laughed. It was almost too easy. They waited until dessert. Melissa poured the drinks. Her hands didn't even shake. She toasted to new beginnings. I clinked glasses with both of them, smiled, and took a sip. Bitter, metallic, almost instant. My throat started to burn. My vision blurred. I dropped the glass and collapsed onto the floor, just like we planned. I heard the panic rise in their voices. Melissa leaned over me, whispering to Dylan that it worked. Dylan started pacing, muttering that it was finally done. They said they'd wait a few hours, then call it in as a suicide. They were so sure, so damn sure. That's when it happened. The closet door opened. Detective Hart stepped out with his badge raised. Behind him, two uniformed officers followed. My attorney emerged from the hallway, phone in hand, recording everything. Melissa screamed. Dylan froze. They looked like ghosts. I got up slowly, brushed the dust off my shirt, and stood eye to eye with them. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. The cops handcuffed Dylan first. Melissa backed into the corner, begging me to understand. Said it wasn't real. Said it was all a mistake. I watched her face twist between fear and fury as they read her rights. All that planning, all that cold calculation, undone in a single moment of arrogance. Justice doesn't always come wrapped in a courtroom. Sometimes it walks into your home wearing a wire and waiting for the right line. They gave it to me on a silver platter. The motive, the method, the confession, all of it caught, all of it real. As they dragged them out, I didn't feel triumph. I felt clean. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't drowning in doubt. I'd faced them on my terms. No rage, no violence, just truth. Cold and sharp as steel. And that, in the end, was enough. In the weeks that followed, the weight of it all finally settled. The trial was swift. The evidence was overwhelming. Melissa and Dylan were both convicted. I signed the divorce papers the same day the verdict was read. As for Dylan, I didn't even attend the sentencing. I'd already buried that part of my life. Blood doesn't mean much when trust is dead. I moved out of the apartment, gave away most of the furniture. It wasn't about anger, it was about starting over. That place had become a mausoleum of betrayal, and I needed air. I found a small house near the outskirts of town, quiet, with enough space to think. I stopped waking up in a cold sweat. I started breathing again. The Corps offered me a promotion, but I turned it down. Combat was no longer where I needed to be. I accepted a position as an instructor at the military academy instead. These days, I teach leadership, ethics, and battlefield decision-making. But more than that, I teach young Marines how to listen to that voice inside. The one that tells you when something feels wrong. The one I almost ignored. I tell them that strength isn't just about winning. Sometimes it's about restraint. About standing in front of the people who tried to break you and choosing not to become like them. Justice isn't revenge, it's clarity. And clarity gives you back your life. I lost my wife, I lost my brother, but I didn't lose myself. That matters more than I ever understood. There were moments I wanted to lash out, moments I wanted to disappear, but I stayed grounded. I held the line, not because I had to, but because I knew who I was before this, and I refused to let them take that from me too. What happened to me was a betrayal of the worst kind, but it was also a test, and in the end, I passed. I didn't win by force, I won by staying true. I walked away with nothing they could steal. Not my values, not my honor, not my soul. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that when the storm hits, you don't just survive by fighting back. Sometimes, you survive by standing still, by being unshakable, by remembering who you are. That's what saved me. That's what I try to give them. And maybe, just maybe, that's how I'll find peace.